Have you ever imagined speaking English confidently, expressing your ideas clearly, and communicating with people from all over the world without fear? Many learners believe that fluency is a special talent that only a few people have. But the truth is very different. Fluency is not a gift. It is a skill that anyone can develop with the right mindset, daily habits, and consistent practice. In today's video from Daily English Audio, you will discover powerful ideas that can completely change the way you learn English. These lessons are simple, practical, and surprisingly effective. If you stay until the end, you may realize that the biggest obstacle to English fluency has never been your vocabulary, grammar, or accent. It has been the way you think about learning itself. Many people spend years studying English, memorizing grammar rules, and learning thousands of words, yet they still struggle to speak naturally. They know a lot, but they cannot use what they know when they need it most. This situation can feel frustrating and discouraging. However, research and real-life success stories show that fluent speakers often focus on different things. They build habits that help English become part of their daily lives. They stop chasing perfection and start building communication skills. The journey to fluency is not about becoming perfect overnight. It is about making small improvements every day until speaking English feels natural and comfortable. One important truth changes everything. Your brain learns language best when it connects English with real experiences, emotions, and meaningful communication. Understanding this idea can completely transform your learning journey. Many English learners believe that they must learn enough grammar before they can start speaking confidently. Because of this belief, they spend months or even years studying rules, reading textbooks, and completing exercises while avoiding real conversations. Unfortunately, this approach often creates a hidden problem. The learner becomes very good at understanding English on paper, but feels nervous and uncomfortable when speaking. The brain starts treating English as a school subject instead of a communication tool. Think about how children learn their first language. They do not begin with grammar books. They listen, observe, imitate, make mistakes, and gradually improve through real communication. Adults can learn in a similar way. Of course, grammar is important, but communication should come first. When you focus on understanding messages and sharing ideas, your brain naturally begins to recognize patterns in the language. This process feels more natural and enjoyable. One surprising fact is that many fluent English speakers around the world still make small grammar mistakes, yet they communicate successfully every day. Their success comes from confidence, practice, and the ability to express their thoughts clearly. Imagine two learners. The first learner knows every grammar rule but rarely speaks. The second learner knows less grammar but practices speaking for 20 minutes every day. After several months, the second learner is often able to communicate more effectively because speaking is a skill that grows through use. Language is like a muscle. Reading about exercise does not make you stronger. Actual exercise does. In the same way, reading about English does not automatically improve speaking ability. Real communication develops fluency. This is why successful learners actively create opportunities to use English in daily life. They talk to themselves in English while walking, describe their surroundings, record short voice messages, repeat sentences from videos, and think in English during simple activities. These small actions train the brain to process English faster and more naturally. Another important point is that mistakes are not signs of failure. They are signs of progress. Every mistake shows that you are testing your knowledge and expanding your abilities. Many learners stay silent because they are afraid of making errors. However, silence prevents growth. Every fluent speaker today was once a beginner who made countless mistakes. The difference is that they continued practicing despite those mistakes. When you stop worrying about perfection and start focusing on communication, learning becomes less stressful and more effective. Little by little, your confidence grows. Your listening improves. Your vocabulary becomes active instead of passive. Most importantly, English changes from something you study into something you actually use. And that is often the moment when real fluency begins to develop. One of the most powerful changes an English learner can make is turning English from a study activity into a daily lifestyle. Many people believe they need long hours of study to become fluent, but research and real-world experience often show something different. Short, consistent exposure to English every day is usually more effective than studying for several hours once a week. The human brain learns through repetition and familiarity. When English becomes a regular part of your daily routine, your brain slowly begins to treat it as something normal instead of something difficult or foreign. This change may seem small, but it can completely transform your learning journey. Think about how people become familiar with a song. They do not memorize it by reading the lyrics hundreds of times. They hear it repeatedly until the words become natural. Language works in a similar way. The more often you see, hear, read, and use English, the more comfortable your brain becomes with it. This is why successful learners surround themselves with English whenever possible. They listen to English podcasts while walking, watch videos during their free time, read simple articles before bed, and follow English content on social media. These activities may seem simple, but together they create a powerful learning environment. Many learners make the mistake of waiting for the perfect moment to practice. They tell themselves that they will start speaking when they know more vocabulary or when their grammar improves. Unfortunately, that perfect moment rarely arrives. Progress begins when action begins. Even 5 or 10 minutes of meaningful English practice every day can produce impressive results over time. Imagine improving just 1% each day. At first, the improvement may seem invisible. However, after weeks and months, the difference becomes remarkable. Small daily efforts often create bigger results than occasional intense study sessions. Another important reason daily exposure works so well is that it reduces fear. When English becomes part of your everyday life, it stops feeling like a difficult challenge. It starts feeling familiar. Familiarity creates confidence. Confidence encourages practice. More practice leads to improvement. This positive cycle helps learners move forward much faster. Instead of feeling nervous every time they hear English, they begin to recognize words, phrases, and sentence patterns automatically. Their listening becomes stronger, and speaking starts to feel more natural. A fascinating fact about the brain is that it continues learning even when you are not actively studying. Every time you hear useful expressions, read interesting sentences, or listen to natural conversations, your brain stores information in the background. Over time, these patterns become easier to understand and use. This is why many learners suddenly realize that they can understand more English than before, even though they never consciously memorized certain phrases. Their brains have been learning through repeated exposure. The goal is not to make English a burden. The goal is to make it a natural part of your life. Choose activities you genuinely enjoy. If you like stories, listen to stories. If you enjoy personal development, watch motivational videos. If you love travel, follow travel content in English. When learning becomes enjoyable, consistency becomes easier. And consistency is often the hidden secret behind every successful English learner. Day by day, word by word, and conversation by conversation, you build a strong foundation that eventually leads to real fluency. What seems impossible today can become completely natural tomorrow when English becomes part of your everyday world. Many learners believe that fluency comes from learning more and more vocabulary. As a result, they spend countless hours memorizing long word lists, hoping that one day they will suddenly become confident speakers. However, one surprising truth changes everything. Fluent speakers do not necessarily know every word. Instead, they know how to use common words effectively. The real secret is not the number of words you know. The real secret is how deeply you know them, and how naturally you can use them in everyday situations. Think about the conversations you have every day. Most of them do not require complicated vocabulary. People talk about their plans, feelings, experiences, goals, work, family, and daily activities. These conversations are usually built from common words and simple sentence patterns. In fact, many studies suggest that a relatively small group of frequently used words appears again and again in daily communication. This means that mastering common vocabulary can have a much greater impact than learning hundreds of rare words that you may never use. Imagine two learners. The first learner knows 10,000 words but struggles to create a simple sentence during a conversation. The second learner knows fewer words but can use them quickly, naturally, and confidently. In most real-life situations, the second learner communicates more successfully. Why? Because communication depends on active vocabulary, not just stored vocabulary. Many learners recognize words when reading but cannot remember them while speaking. This happens because they focus on memorization instead of practical use. A more effective approach is to learn words in context. Instead of memorizing a single word, learn it inside a sentence. For example, instead of learning the word opportunity alone, learn a complete sentence such as, "This job is a great opportunity for me." When you learn vocabulary this way, your brain remembers not only the meaning, but also how the word naturally fits into communication. Over time, speaking becomes easier because your mind begins recalling complete phrases rather than isolated words. Another powerful strategy is repetition through real use. Every time you hear, read, write, or say a word, the connection in your brain becomes stronger. This is why successful learners review vocabulary regularly and use it in conversations, journals, voice recordings, and daily thinking exercises. They do not simply collect words. They actively bring those words into their lives. Each use strengthens memory and improves fluency. Interestingly, many native speakers use the same core vocabulary repeatedly throughout the day. What makes them sound fluent is not advanced vocabulary in every sentence. It is their ability to express ideas smoothly and naturally. This should be encouraging for every learner. You do not need to know every word in the dictionary to become a confident English speaker. You need to become comfortable with the words that matter most. When you focus on useful vocabulary, common expressions, and real communication, learning becomes more practical and enjoyable. You stop feeling overwhelmed by endless word lists and start noticing real progress. Little by little, familiar words become trusted tools. Sentences become easier to build. Conversations become less stressful. And eventually, you discover something remarkable. Fluency is not about knowing everything. It is about using what you know with confidence, clarity, and purpose. That simple shift in focus can accelerate your English journey more than you ever imagined. One of the biggest reasons people fail to reach fluency is not a lack of intelligence, talent, or opportunity. The real reason is often much simpler. They give up too soon. Language learning is a journey that rewards patience. Unfortunately, many learners expect fast results. They study for a few weeks, make some effort, and then become disappointed when they are not speaking like a native speaker. This disappointment creates frustration, and frustration often leads to quitting. What many people do not realize is that progress in language learning is usually invisible before it becomes visible. Imagine planting a seed in the ground. For days or even weeks, you may not see anything happening above the surface. It can seem as if nothing is growing. However, beneath the soil, important changes are taking place. Roots are developing, strength is building, and preparation is happening. Language learning works in a similar way. During the early stages, your brain is collecting information, recognizing patterns, and creating new connections. Even when you feel stuck, learning is still happening. Many successful English speakers describe a period when they felt they were making no progress at all. They listened to English every day, practiced regularly, and still struggled to understand conversations or express themselves clearly. Then, almost unexpectedly, things started to change. They noticed they could understand more videos. They found it easier to follow conversations. Words came to mind more quickly. What seemed impossible before suddenly became possible. This is often called the breakthrough effect. The improvement feels sudden, but it is actually the result of weeks or months of consistent effort. A common mistake among learners is comparing themselves to others. They watch fluent speakers online and think, "I will never be that good." But comparison can be dangerous because you are only seeing the result of someone else's journey, not the years of practice behind it. Every fluent speaker was once a beginner. Every confident communicator once struggled to form simple sentences. The difference is that they continued moving forward, even when progress felt slow. Another important truth is that language learning is not a straight line. Some days you will feel motivated and confident. On other days, you may feel tired, confused, or discouraged. This is completely normal. Improvement does not happen in a perfect upward direction. There are good days and difficult days. What matters most is continuing despite temporary challenges. Consistency is far more important than perfection. A learner who practices a little every day often achieves better results than someone who studies intensely for a short period and then stops completely. The human brain is designed to learn through repetition and time. Every conversation you listen to, every sentence you read, and every word you practice contributes to your growth. Even small efforts matter. A 10-minute listening session, a short reading exercise, or a brief speaking practice may seem insignificant today, but these small actions accumulate over time. Months later, they become the foundation of real fluency. Perhaps the most encouraging fact is that you do not need extraordinary talent to succeed. You simply need persistence. The learners who achieve fluency are not always the smartest or the fastest. They are often the ones who refuse to quit. They continue learning when it feels difficult. They keep practicing when results are not immediately visible. They trust the process and allow time to do its work. When you understand this principle, your mindset changes completely. Instead of asking, "Why am I not fluent yet?" you begin asking, "What small step can I take today?" That simple shift creates powerful results. Fluency is not built in a single day. It is built through hundreds of small efforts repeated over time. And every day you continue learning, you are much closer to your goal than you were yesterday. One of the most powerful habits that separates fluent English speakers from struggling learners is the ability to think in English. This may sound difficult at first, but it is actually one of the most natural ways to improve fluency. Many learners translate everything from their native language into English before speaking. This process may seem harmless, but it often creates delays, confusion, and hesitation. The brain becomes busy translating instead of communicating. As a result, conversations feel stressful and slow. Learning to think directly in English can dramatically improve your speed, confidence, and overall speaking ability. Imagine that someone asks you a simple question in English. If you first translate the question into your native language, then create an answer, and finally translate the answer back into English, your brain has to complete several extra steps. This process takes time and increases the chance of mistakes. On the other hand, when you think directly in English, communication becomes smoother and more natural. Your mind begins responding to ideas rather than translating words. Many people believe that thinking in English is only possible for advanced learners. However, this is not true. Even beginners can start developing this skill. The secret is to begin with simple thoughts. For example, when you wake up in the morning, you can say in your mind, "I need to get up." While making breakfast, you can think, "This coffee smells good," or "I need to leave soon." These simple sentences may seem small, but they train your brain to process English naturally throughout the day. Another effective technique is describing your surroundings in English. Look around your room and mentally name objects or describe what you see. You might think, "The window is open," "The weather looks nice," or "My phone is on the table." This exercise requires no special materials, no teacher, and no extra time. Yet it provides valuable speaking practice because your brain is actively producing English instead of passively consuming it. Interestingly, many fluent speakers develop their skills by creating an English environment inside their minds. They talk to themselves, imagine conversations, and mentally describe daily activities. At first, their sentences were simple and limited. Over time, their vocabulary expanded, their confidence grew, and their thoughts became more complex. Eventually, English stopped feeling like a foreign language and started feeling like a natural tool for communication. Thinking in English also helps improve vocabulary retention. When you use words repeatedly in meaningful situations, your brain remembers them more effectively. A word learned through real mental use is often remembered longer than a word memorized from a list. This is because the brain connects the word to an experience, thought, or situation. These connections make learning stronger and more lasting. Another benefit is increased confidence. Many learners fear speaking because they worry about making mistakes. However, regular thinking practice allows you to rehearse English privately. Nobody is judging you. Nobody is correcting you. You are simply training your brain. As your comfort level increases, speaking with other people becomes less intimidating. The language begins to feel familiar rather than foreign. One surprising truth is that fluency is not only about knowing English. It is about being able to access English quickly when you need it. Thinking in English strengthens this ability every day. It teaches your brain to retrieve words, form sentences, and express ideas more efficiently. The more often you do it, the easier it becomes. Over time, you may notice an exciting change. Instead of translating every sentence, English thoughts begin appearing automatically. Simple conversations become easier. Listening feels more natural. Speaking requires less effort. This transformation does not happen overnight, but it happens through consistent practice. By making English part of your daily thinking, you build a bridge between knowledge and communication. And for many learners, that bridge becomes one of the most important steps on the journey to true fluency. One of the most surprising truths about learning English is that listening is often more important than speaking in the beginning. Many learners focus almost entirely on speaking practice because they want to become fluent as quickly as possible. While speaking is important, fluent speech is built on strong listening skills. Before you can confidently express ideas, your brain needs to become familiar with how English sounds in real situations. Listening provides the foundation that makes speaking easier, faster, and more natural. Think about how children learn their first language. Long before they start speaking, they spend months and even years listening. They hear words, phrases, sentence patterns, and expressions thousands of times. Their brains gradually absorb the language without consciously studying grammar rules. By the time they begin speaking, they already have a large understanding of how the language works. English learners can benefit from a similar process. The more quality English you listen to, the more natural the language becomes in your mind. Many learners become frustrated because they cannot understand every word in an English video or conversation. They often stop listening because they believe they need perfect understanding. However, successful learners understand an important principle. You do not need to understand everything to learn something valuable. Even when you miss some words, your brain is still learning pronunciation, rhythm, sentence structure, and common expressions. Every listening session helps your brain become more familiar with English. Another common mistake is listening only once. Imagine watching a short video and understanding only 50% of it. Some learners immediately move to a different video. A more effective strategy is repetition. Listening to the same content several times can produce remarkable results. During the first listening, you may only understand the main idea. During the second listening, you notice new words. During the third listening, you begin recognizing sentence patterns and details. Repetition helps transform unfamiliar sounds into familiar language. An interesting fact is that fluent speakers do not hear English word by word. Instead, they recognize groups of words and common phrases. For example, when native speakers hear a phrase like, "How are you doing today?" they do not analyze each word separately. They recognize the entire phrase instantly. Listening regularly helps your brain develop the same ability. Over time, you begin hearing chunks of language rather than isolated words. This makes understanding much faster and more efficient. The type of content you choose also matters. Many learners force themselves to listen to difficult material that feels boring or overwhelming. This often reduces motivation. A better approach is to find content that genuinely interests you. If you enjoy personal development, listen to motivational talks. If you like stories, listen to audiobooks or storytelling channels. If you enjoy travel, watch travel videos. Interest creates attention, and attention improves learning. Listening also improves pronunciation in a natural way. The more you hear correct pronunciation, the more your brain remembers how words should sound. Many learners try to improve pronunciation by studying complicated rules, but regular listening often produces better results. Your ears train your mouth. When you repeatedly hear natural English, you gradually begin copying its sounds, rhythm, and intonation without even realizing it. Perhaps the most exciting benefit of listening is that it prepares you for real conversations. Every podcast, video, interview, or audiobook adds to your mental library of English. You collect useful phrases, natural expressions, and speaking patterns. Later, when you need to communicate, your brain can draw from this library. Words come more easily. Sentences feel more natural. Conversations become less stressful. Fluency does not come only from speaking more. It comes from feeding your mind with enough English that speaking becomes a natural result. Every minute of meaningful listening strengthens your understanding and moves you closer to confidence. The learners who make the fastest progress are often not those who speak the most at first, but those who listen consistently and patiently. Over time, all those hours of listening create a powerful transformation, turning English from a language you study into a language you truly understand and use. One of the greatest obstacles to English fluency is not grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, or even lack of time. It is fear. Fear silently stops millions of learners from reaching their full potential. Some people are afraid of making mistakes. Others are afraid of being judged. Some worry that their accent is not good enough, while others feel embarrassed when they cannot find the right words. These fears may seem small, but they can create a powerful barrier between a learner and real progress. The truth is that fear has prevented more people from becoming fluent than a lack of ability ever has. Many learners believe that fluent speakers never make mistakes. However, this belief is far from reality. Even native speakers make grammar mistakes, forget words, mispronounce names, and sometimes struggle to express their thoughts clearly. Communication is not about perfection. It is about connection. The purpose of language is to share ideas, emotions, information, and experiences. If people understand your message, then communication is already happening successfully. Imagine a person who refuses to speak English until every sentence is perfect. Weeks pass, then months, and sometimes even years. During this time, the learner continues studying but avoids real communication. Meanwhile, another learner speaks regularly despite making mistakes. At first, the second learner sounds less accurate, but with every conversation, confidence grows. Vocabulary becomes active. Pronunciation improves. Speaking becomes easier. After enough practice, the learner who embraced mistakes often becomes far more fluent than the learner who waited for perfection. This happens because mistakes are not enemies of learning. They are part of learning itself. Every mistake contains valuable information. It shows you what needs improvement. It reveals gaps in your knowledge. Most importantly, it proves that you are trying. People who never make mistakes are often people who never challenge themselves. Growth begins when you step outside your comfort zone and allow yourself to learn through experience. A fascinating fact about the human brain is that it learns especially well through correction and feedback. When you make a mistake and then learn the correct form, your brain creates a stronger memory. This is one reason why active learners often improve faster than passive learners. They are constantly testing their knowledge and strengthening their understanding through real use. Another important truth is that most people are far less critical than we imagine. Many English learners worry that others are paying attention to every mistake they make. In reality, most people focus on the message rather than the errors. If someone is speaking with confidence and trying to communicate, listeners usually appreciate the effort. They are interested in understanding the idea, not counting every grammatical mistake. Confidence does not come before action. Confidence comes from action. Many learners wait until they feel confident before speaking. Unfortunately, confidence rarely appears on its own. It develops through repeated experience. The first conversation may feel uncomfortable. The second may feel slightly easier. The third may feel even better. Over time, what once seemed frightening becomes completely normal. Think about any skill you have learned in life. Whether it was riding a bicycle, driving a car, or learning a new job, mistakes were part of the process. Language learning is no different. Every fluent speaker has experienced awkward moments, misunderstandings, and embarrassing errors. The difference is that they continued moving forward instead of allowing fear to stop them. The moment you stop treating mistakes as failures and start treating them as lessons, your learning journey changes completely. You become more willing to speak, more open to practice, and more resilient when challenges appear. Instead of asking, "What if I make a mistake?" you begin asking, "What can I learn from this experience?" That simple shift in mindset can unlock extraordinary progress. In the end, fluency is not achieved by the person who makes the fewest mistakes. It is achieved by the person who keeps communicating, keeps learning, and keeps moving forward despite those mistakes. Every conversation is a step closer to confidence, and every mistake is a step closer to mastery. That is why courage, not perfection, is often the real key to becoming fluent in English. Many people believe that learning English is mainly about finding the perfect course, the best teacher, or the most advanced learning method. While good resources can certainly help, there is something even more important than any course or textbook: consistency. The learners who achieve remarkable results are usually not the ones with the most expensive programs or the most free time. They are the ones who continue practicing day after day, even when motivation is low. In fact, consistency is often the hidden force behind every successful language learning story. Motivation is powerful, but it is also temporary. Some days you feel excited and ready to learn for hours. On other days, you may feel tired, busy, or distracted. If your progress depends entirely on motivation, your learning journey will be unpredictable. This is why successful learners build habits instead of relying only on inspiration. Habits continue working even when motivation disappears. A person who studies English for 15 minutes every day often achieves more progress than someone who studies for 5 hours once a month. Imagine two learners. The first learner spends an entire weekend studying English, but then does nothing for the next 3 weeks. The second learner practices for 20 minutes every day. At first, the first learner may seem more dedicated because of the long study sessions. However, after several months, the second learner usually makes greater progress. This happens because the brain learns languages through regular exposure and repeated contact. Frequent interaction with English strengthens memory and builds familiarity over time. One fascinating fact about learning is that small actions often produce surprisingly large results. Reading 1 page of English every day may not seem significant. Learning 3 new words each day may feel too simple. Listening to a short podcast for 10 minutes may appear insignificant. Yet when these actions are repeated consistently, they create powerful long-term improvement. 3 words a day become more than 1,000 words in a year. 10 minutes of listening a day becomes over 60 hours of listening practice. Small efforts accumulate and eventually create extraordinary results. Another reason consistency is so effective is that it keeps English active in your mind. When learners stop practicing for long periods, they often forget vocabulary, lose confidence, and feel as though they are starting over. Regular practice prevents this problem. Even a short daily session reminds your brain that English remains important. This continuous contact helps maintain momentum and makes learning feel more natural. Successful learners also understand that progress is not always dramatic. Sometimes improvement is difficult to notice because it happens gradually. You may not feel different from one week to the next. However, if you compare your current abilities to where you were 6 months ago, the change can be remarkable. You may understand more videos, recognize more vocabulary, speak with greater confidence, and express your ideas more clearly. These improvements are often the result of hundreds of small learning moments that accumulated over time. Another important lesson is that perfect study sessions are not necessary. Many people delay learning because they believe they need a quiet room, a perfect schedule, or a long block of free time. In reality, progress often comes from using small moments throughout the day. You can listen to English while walking, review vocabulary while waiting, read a short article during a break, or think in English while doing simple tasks. These small opportunities can become powerful learning experiences when used consistently. Perhaps the most inspiring truth is that fluency is not built through one big achievement. It is built through countless small decisions. Every time you choose to practice instead of procrastinate, every time you listen to English instead of scrolling endlessly, and every time you continue despite feeling tired, you are investing in your future abilities. These choices may seem ordinary today, but over months and years they create extraordinary results. In the end, success in English is rarely about talent. It is usually about persistence. The learners who reach fluency are often those who keep going when others stop. They understand that every small effort matters. They trust the process, remain patient, and continue moving forward. Step by step, day by day, and habit by habit, they transform their dreams into reality. And that is why consistency remains one of the most powerful forces in the journey toward English fluency. One of the most important discoveries in language learning is that fluency does not come from knowing English. It comes from using English. This difference may seem small, but it changes everything. Many learners spend years collecting information about English. They memorize grammar rules, study vocabulary lists, and watch educational videos. While these activities are valuable, they often create a false sense of progress. A learner may know a great deal about English, but still struggle to communicate in real situations. True improvement begins when knowledge becomes action. Imagine someone who reads 10 books about swimming but never enters the water. That person may understand swimming techniques, breathing methods, and safety rules, but when the time comes to swim, knowledge alone will not be enough. Language learning works in a similar way. Reading about English is useful, but fluency develops when you actively use the language. Speaking, writing, listening, and thinking in English transform passive knowledge into practical ability. Many learners fall into what experts sometimes call the learning trap. They constantly prepare to use English but never actually use it. They tell themselves, "I need more vocabulary first," or "I need to improve my grammar before I start speaking." As a result, they remain in preparation mode for months or even years. The problem is that there is no perfect moment when you suddenly feel completely ready. Growth happens through practice, not before practice. One remarkable fact about the human brain is that it adapts to the activities you perform most often. If you spend all your time studying grammar, your brain becomes better at analyzing grammar. If you spend time listening, your listening improves. If you practice speaking regularly, your speaking becomes stronger. The brain develops the skills that it uses. This is why active engagement is so important. To become a better speaker, you must speak. To become a better writer, you must write. Another common mistake is waiting for opportunities instead of creating them. Some learners believe they need native speakers, expensive courses, or special environments before they can practice. While these resources can help, they are not required. Opportunities exist everywhere. You can speak to yourself while walking. You can describe your day in English. You can record your voice and listen to it later. You can write short journal entries. You can repeat sentences from videos and imitate pronunciation. These simple activities may seem ordinary, but they provide valuable practice that strengthens real communication skills. An interesting observation among successful learners is that they often focus more on participation than perfection. They understand that improvement comes through action. They are willing to have imperfect conversations, write imperfect sentences, and make imperfect attempts. Every effort teaches them something new. Every interaction builds experience. Over time, these experiences accumulate and create noticeable progress. Action also creates confidence. Many people believe confidence comes first, but in reality, confidence usually comes after repeated practice. The more you use English, the more familiar it becomes. Familiarity reduces fear. Reduced fear encourages more practice. This creates a positive cycle that accelerates learning. What once felt difficult gradually becomes comfortable. Another benefit of active use is that it helps identify weaknesses. When you speak or write, you quickly discover which words you know, which expressions you need, and which areas require improvement. This feedback is incredibly valuable because it allows you to focus your efforts where they matter most. Instead of guessing what you need to learn, real communication shows you directly. Perhaps the most inspiring truth is that every fluent speaker reached fluency through use, not just study. They learned by participating, experimenting, and communicating. They transformed information into skill through consistent action. The same path is available to every learner. You do not need perfect grammar, a perfect accent, or perfect confidence before you begin. You simply need the willingness to use what you already know. In the end, English is not a subject to be stored in your memory. It is a tool to be used in your daily life. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Every conversation, every sentence, every attempt, and every small effort moves you forward. Knowledge opens the door, but action is what carries you through it. That is why the journey to fluency truly begins the moment you stop preparing to use English and start using English every single day. One of the most life-changing truths about learning English is that fluency is not a destination. It is a journey of personal growth. Many learners imagine that one day they will suddenly become fluent and all their struggles will disappear. They picture a magical moment when every word comes easily and every conversation feels effortless. While fluency certainly becomes easier with time, the real transformation happens long before that final goal is reached. Every step you take while learning English is already changing you in ways you may not even notice. When you learn a new language, you are doing much more than memorizing vocabulary or studying grammar. You are training your brain to think differently. You are developing patience, discipline, confidence, and communication skills. Every challenge you overcome makes you stronger. Every new word you learn expands your ability to connect with the world. Every conversation you attempt helps you grow not only as a language learner, but also as a person. Think about how many opportunities English can create. It can help you access knowledge from around the world. It can allow you to understand books, videos, podcasts, and ideas that were once unavailable to you. It can help you communicate with people from different cultures and backgrounds. It can open doors to education, careers, travel, and personal development. For millions of people, English has become more than a language. It has become a bridge to new possibilities. However, the most important lesson is that these opportunities do not appear overnight. They are built through small daily efforts. Every page you read, every video you watch, every sentence you speak, and every minute you spend practicing contributes to your future success. Many learners underestimate the power of these small actions because they seem insignificant in the moment. But when repeated consistently, they create extraordinary results. Imagine looking back 1 year from today. You have two choices. The first choice is to keep waiting for the perfect time to learn, hoping that motivation will suddenly appear. The second choice is to continue taking small steps every day, even when progress feels slow. 1 year later, the difference between these two choices could be enormous. The learner who stayed consistent may be holding conversations, understanding English content with confidence, and enjoying opportunities that once seemed impossible. Another important truth is that your future fluency is being created right now. Not tomorrow, not next month, not next year. Every decision you make today shapes the English speaker you will become. If you practice today, you move forward. If you listen today, you improve. If you speak today, you gain experience. Success is not built in giant leaps. It is built in small daily actions repeated over time. Many people quit because they focus too much on how far they still have to go. Successful learners focus on how far they have already come. They celebrate small victories. They recognize progress. They understand that every improvement matters. This positive mindset helps them stay motivated and continue growing. The beautiful thing about language learning is that nobody starts as an expert. Every fluent speaker was once confused by simple sentences. Every confident communicator once felt nervous about speaking. Every successful learner once stood exactly where you are today. The difference is that they kept moving forward. They trusted the process. They believed that their efforts would eventually pay off. And they were right. As we come to the end of this video, remember one powerful message. Fluency is not reserved for special people. It is not a gift that only a few lucky individuals receive. It is the result of consistent effort, patience, courage, and daily practice. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to know every word. You do not need to speak without mistakes. You simply need to keep going. Every word you learn matters. Every minute you practice matters. Every mistake you make teaches you something valuable. Progress may be slow at times, but slow progress is still progress. The important thing is never to stop. Imagine the version of yourself 1 year from now, speaking English with confidence, understanding conversations more easily, and communicating your ideas clearly. That future is built by the choices you make today. Thank you for spending your time with Daily English Audio. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful English learning content. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep believing in yourself. Your English journey starts with a single step, but your success comes from taking that step again and again. See you in the next video.